Having a cookie consent banner on your website is all the rage right now. Not only is it required under several privacy laws, but it is a great way to show your website visitors that you respect their privacy and won't share their data with third parties until you get consent first. In this video, we're going to cover common examples that we've seen where people put cookie consent banners on their website, but they're deceptive or non-compliant, which can result in fines or lawsuits that we're already seeing in this space. So stick around while we go through these examples and show you how you can get a proper cookie consent solution for your website. Before we start sharing some bad examples of cookie consent solutions, I think it's important for us to understand what are cookie consent solutions and why do they even exist. So a cookie is a little packet of data that gets put on a browser of a user who's visiting your website. Cookies are not a bad thing. They're actually a great thing. For example, there are essential cookies that are needed to ensure that the website works properly. A good example here would be having a cookie placed on the user's browser to ensure they remain logged into your website. These are essential cookies, and getting consent to these cookies are actually not necessary. What is necessary is getting consent for non-essential cookies. So if your website uses marketing or advertising or analytics cookies, you need to get consent first prior to placing those cookies on the user's browser and prior to tracking them on your website. This is a requirement under privacy laws like GDPR and the UK Data Protection Act, where that law can start applying to you the moment you start tracking a user. A cookie consent solution helps ensure that you get consent prior to placing non-essential cookies on a user's browser. So now let's talk about some examples of some misleading cookie consent solutions and some straight up non-compliant cookie consent solutions so that you can be educated on what to avoid to set up a proper cookie consent for your own website. Okay, so here's our first example to cover today, which is a cookie consent solution that says we use cookies and a bunch of other stuff and then says agree and enter. So this is not compliant with any particular privacy law because all you're doing is stating to the user that we use cookies and you can agree and enter the website. I also see versions of this where it's like we use cookies and then you have an OK button. So this is non-compliant with just about every privacy law that requires a cookie notice and consent solution. And that is because users have to have a clear choice. They are opted out by default. Residents of the EU and the UK are opted out by default from non-essential cookies being placed on their browsers, and they actually have to click accept before your website lets scripts fire and put non-essential cookies on the user's browser. So it is important to understand, I mean, I get it. Having an OK button would be really nice for website owners. Like, okay, that's really easy, but it's just simply not compliant. And the fact is there are companies that have been fined for this. So Vueling Airlines was fined 30,000 euros for no option to refuse cookies. And Twitter was fined 30,000 euros for failing to provide a link in their cookie banner for people to reject the use of cookies in managing preferences. So it is, I get the simplicity of it. I know it looks simple and easy, but the fact is it doesn't actually respect the privacy rights of your website visitors, and it doesn't properly comply with those laws and put you at risk for penalties for non-compliance. And yes, we referenced airlines and Twitter here, but the fact is there are small businesses getting dinged for these as well. You can visit enforcementtracker.com at any time to see these types of fines being issued for non-compliance with these privacy laws. Okay, so how would we fix this cookie consent solution? Well, unfortunately, my guess here is that this is just a banner pop-up and doesn't actually control scripts on the website, which would be a problem because you need this cookie banner to properly control these scripts and only allow them to fire after the users clicked accept all, or they've saved their settings and made their selections of which cookies they're going to allow you to place on their browser. So my guess is that they're going to need an entirely different solution, but let's just pretend that they do actually have the scripts being controlled. They need to have a decline button so that you can properly capture consent prior to letting scripts fire and place non-essential cookies on a user's browser. So that's how you would fix this issue. Again, I really feel like banners that just have this OK button probably don't have the infrastructure to actually manage third-party non-essential scripts. So it may be best for this user to just find an entirely different solution. Okay, so in example 2 here, we have a pop-up that does have some categories being listed. Strict cookies, so essential cookies, cookies that are needed, otherwise the website literally won't work. Performance cookies, so I'm guessing that's more like analytics cookies that are placed on the user's browser. And then cooperation cookies, which I've actually never heard of. I can make a hunch, though, that that is cooperating with like advertising programs and placing non-essential marketing cookies on a user's browser. So this cookie consent banner is not compliant for several reasons. Number one, it does not provide an actual choice to users as there is no deny button. You need to understand that website consent solutions need to provide choices under GDPR, the UK Data Protection Act, and even PIPEDA, Canada's privacy law. So without a deny button, this is non-compliant, and there was, well, Google was fined 50 million euros for limited information, lack of transparency, and lack of valid consent. So, and I know, yet again, that's another big company that was fined for this stuff, but there are smaller businesses getting dinged as well. And I mean, ultimately, what we're talking about here is respecting the visitor's privacy rights. So just keep that in mind with all these items. So yes, because of the fact that they only offer the select all button, this could also be considered deceptive. The big green select all button, and then there's like this tiny little confirm selection button that's kind of like, well, it's certainly not green and highlighted. It's hyperlinked, which is not bad. But again, this is trying to guide the user to just quickly clicking select all, which is not considered a compliant practice. All right, so let's talk about how to solve this. So there's two parts. Let's improve that color contrast. As you'll see under strictly necessary cookies, they've like slightly lightened that wording, and that is potentially an accessibility issue that people should just keep in mind in general. Also, it's just hard for the user to see that very quickly. You want to make the cookie consent solutions very clearly pronounced so that people can see the choices they get to make and they can edit them accordingly. Also, they need to change that confirm selection underline hyperlink to an actual button that's the same color as select all, so that there's no confusion or no concern of providing a deceptive cookie consent solution. So here, at first glance, it's like, wow, this is really intense. You know, there's all these buttons and toggles I can select. I will say they do have an accept all and a save and exit. I would personally recommend those get to be the same color. Therefore, there's no concern about deceptive practices. But also what we have here is that this individual has listed that we provide personalized content, personalized ads, basic ads, a personalized ads profile, a personalized content profile, and measure ad performance. And we all need that data under a legitimate interest. So a legitimate interest is like collecting stuff because you need it for like security purposes to prevent your website from being hacked, for example. That is not the basis for what allows you to send people targeted ads or collect their data just for analytics or advertising purposes. That would more so be that the users provided consent. And that is why this is a concerning pop-up that is being displayed to these website visitors. It is because they are falsely saying that they need to collect this data for a legitimate interest, when in reality it is for an advertising, marketing, or analytics interest. So that's a little bit concerning. Okay, so how do we fix this? Well, we need to change the fact that this is not a legitimate interest. This is for advertising and marketing and analytics interests. So we need to make sure those toggles are opted out by default, and only if a user accepts all do we allow ourselves to let scripts fire and put non-essential cookies on a user's browser so that we can track them and send them relevant ads. And this really makes you step back and realize the fact that, you know, if you're a website visitor, which we all are, the fact is you're watching this video on a website, wouldn't you like the right to be able to say, no, I don't want you to send me ads, or yes, I do want you to send me ads because I'm actually interested in your product? That is what I'm talking about here. You know, the fact is I love targeted ads. I really do. But the fact is that doesn't mean I don't want to have the choice to make that selection if I want targeted ads from a particular provider. And therein lies the benefit of these cookie consent solutions, and hopefully gives you insight as you visit websites. So example 4 here is kind of an interesting one. This is pretty rare, but I wanted to share it regardless because, well, I want to make sure people know that this is probably a bad idea. So this website, there is that go to button. And what was happening with website visitors was right when they hovered over go to and were about to click, the cookie consent banner would populate and have people click, fine by me, I accept the use of cookies. This is non-compliant because it's deceptive. I mean, people were ready to click go to, and then all of a sudden they find themselves consenting to non-essential cookies. So that's a bad practice. On top of that, we do have Find by Me, I accept in all blue, and no clear deny button. That is something they would also want to consider adding. So the takeaways for this pop-up are: don't be deceptive. Make sure that people are clicking Find by Me, I accept at their own free will and not just because they thought they were clicking another button. And the other action item they could easily take is adding a deny button to ensure that they are complying with laws like GDPR, the UK Data Protection Act, and PIPEDA. Okay, so we just went through 4 examples of some deceptive and non-compliant cookie consent solutions that have landed some businesses in some hot water and resulted in 5-figure or more fines. There are even businesses that have been fined millions of euros for non-compliance or deceptive practices. So, I think it all comes back down to what we always share at Termageddon, which is you first need to find out what laws apply to you. That is, before you do anything else, you have to find out the laws that apply to you, because only then can you determine if you need a cookie consent solution and what type of cookie consent solution that you need to provide to your respective website visitors. Once you figure that out, you can then provide a proper cookie consent solution that complies with the laws that specifically apply to you. So you may be asking yourself, well, how do I get a cookie consent solution? Well, there are 2 routes we always recommend. Route number 1 is to ask your privacy attorney, or ask your general attorney if they are comfortable dealing with privacy laws and keeping your policies up to date and helping advise on what type of cookie consent solution you need. I just said advise, really weird. Advise. So that is always the best route, but the fact is not a lot of website owners have the type of funds needed to, keep an attorney retained for this type of ongoing effort that needs to happen, given all the changes in privacy laws going on right now. So another second option is a privacy policy generator. Full disclosure, I work at Termageddon. We are a privacy policy generator. But one thing I really like about our tool is a privacy law identifier that helps you figure out the laws that apply to you. And based on your answers to the questionnaire, it generates a proper cookie consent solution that you need for your respective website visitors. So those are the 2 routes, attorneys or generators, that I personally recommend. Attorneys are always the best, but if you need a more affordable solution, a generator is a good idea. So yeah, I hope that all helps, and I certainly wish you consider checking out Termageddon.com. But whatever route you choose, I do hope you take the effort to invest time into respecting your website visitors' privacy rights, complying with laws, and avoiding fines and lawsuits. All right, that's it for now. If you like this channel, we are creating more and more videos around privacy, around the changes we're constantly seeing. So if you want to stay up to date with this stuff, feel free to subscribe and reach out anytime. Thanks. Bye.